Hi everyone, my name is Atia and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about all of the different books and things that I read during the month of July. Before we get into what I read specifically, I do want to give some, stats and things. I am a stats girly when it comes to books. So I read 20 books. 11 novels, one novella, and 8 volumes of manga. One of those was fantasy, 3 contemporary, 2 mystery thrillers, 1 horror slash paranormal, 8 historical fiction, well, actually 9 historical fiction, and 1 fantasy romance, as well as 3 contemporary romance. Then, in terms of pages, it is 4,506 pages. As I'm reading this, I'm like, I feel like this is missing one of the books. But if it is, I'll put the correct stat up. I listened to a total of 11.55 hours. 10 of the books were adult, 8 were young adult, and 1 was middle grade. Again, as I'm looking at this, I'm like, these numbers are not making sense. So, okay. So it was actually 9 young adult. That's what happens when you do your notes and then finish a book after you do the notes and forget to go back to it. So let's jump right into it. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and let's slide on into it. So for today's wrap up, I am going to do it by genre and see how I like it. This may change month to month. I may sometimes do it by star rating, by author, by type, I don't know, but we're going to do it by genre. So we're actually going to start with a book that I did not even pull from my shelf. So let me go get that. All right. So first up, we have The City of Dusk by Tara Sim. This is the start of a fantasy series. I, again, cannot remember if this is a duology, trilogy, whatever, but this is the first book. The second book actually comes out this month in August. One of the book clubs that I'm a part of, Be Too Weird, we read this during the month of July, and overall I can say that I really enjoyed it. So what is this book about? We have this world that was abandoned by its gods. So this is a world where there are multiple gods and 4 different gods, and they each have descendants that have created these houses, and these houses have some type of magical power and they help the world sustain itself, but they are not royalty. So there is a royal aspect to this a little bit because there is a monarchy in place that is separate from the 4 houses. We follow 4 of the heirs from these 4 different houses as things start to go awry. It's a really short synopsis, so I'm going to read it to you. For every realm, there is a god. For every god, there is an heir. For every heir, there is a price. The 4 realms, life, death, light, and darkness, all converge on the City of Dusk. But the gods have withdrawn their favor from the once thriving and vibrant metropolis. And without it, all the realms are dying. Unwilling to stand by and watch the destruction, the 4 heirs to divine power, Angelica, an elementalist with her eye set on the throne, Risha, a necromancer fighting to keep the peace, Nicholas, a soldier who struggles to see the light, and Tasia, a shadow-wielding rogue with a reckless heart, will become reluctant allies in the quest to save their city. But their rebellion will cost them dearly. I loved the world. It's very culturally diverse. Like, you can tell that there are many different cultures that inform the different parts of this thriving metropolis. The characterization is complex, even if sometimes there is one particular character I just really want to punch in the face, but whatever. I'm looking forward to seeing more of the side characters in book 2, The Midnight Kingdom, because something really interesting was happening with them, and I'm hoping that those characters are expanded upon in the second book. The last 25% are hit different. Okay, that's not to say that the first All right, my apologies if the quality has now dipped because my phone told me that shooting in 4K, I didn't have enough memory. So we have now switched to HD. Whatever. What was I saying? Oh, yes, the first 75% of this book is incredible. It's great. You feel yourself being pulled back. I was still interested. It is slower paced, but it sets up so many things that happen in the last 25%. I mean, I could not turn the pages fast enough in the last quarter of this book. And I ended up giving it 4.25 stars. So funny enough, fantasy and sci-fi, well, really fantasy, are my favorite genre. It's usually the genre I read the most of in a month, but I only read one fantasy book. Like, I only completed one fantasy book during the month of July. Next up, we're going to actually move over to mystery, thriller, horror. And the first book in this genre that I finished is actually House of Cotton by Monica Brashears. This was one of my most anticipated 2023 releases. One of my most anticipated. I paid real money, full price for this book, and it is probably one of the biggest disappointments I have had so far this year. House of Cotton follows, and I don't even know how to describe this without giving it away. It follows Magnolia, and she's down on her luck. She recently buried her grandmother. She is broke, she's poor, and her landlord is a bit of a creep, so she doesn't actually want to live in her apartment. And she gets approached by this guy, Cotton, who's like, hey, I have a job for you, and it's going to help grieving families move on and, you know, deal with and process the grief of losing their loved one. And she's like, all right, cool, bet, let's do it. This book definitely tries to deal with the commodification of the Black body and how the goals of a white supremacist society usually overtake seeing Black people's humanity. And I thought that was really interesting. I thought it was going to do really interesting things. I had such high hopes when I was about halfway through. I was like, okay, we're being set up for something that's going to be mind-blowing. It's going to be poignant. It's going to be great. And it's so weird in the beginning, and it had me intrigued. But Magnolia Brown as a protagonist did not evolve. And these themes that you think we're going to talk about barely get addressed. You have like these pithy comments in Magnolia's head, barely, right? And then she moves on. And the topic is never actually addressed. I was let down. I was actually kind of pissed off. And the reason, right, I said that I bought this full price. I did, right? It is now in my Pango bookshop. I think actually someone may have bought it. But like, I immediately unhauled it. Because I was like, I will not be recommending this to anyone. I will not be rereading this ever, and I just don't want this on my shelf because it makes me kind of frustrated and upset to think about the fact that I was really looking forward to this book and it was a complete letdown. I gave it 2.5 stars, but I guess it did nothing wrong technically. It wasn't I gave it, for right now, on the record, I'm saying 2.5 stars. But 2 stars is really feeling like what it should be, honestly, the more that I think about it. So let's move on, so I don't become too enraged by the fact that I purchased, read, and then immediately unhauled that book. Next up, we have Murder is a Piece of Cake by Valerie Burns. This is the second book in a cozy mystery series. We follow our protagonist, Maddie. So in the first book, we learn that she's like this very spoiled woman who, I believe, was she left at the altar? Or like her engagement is broken off and she goes to the middle of nowhere because this great aunt has passed and has left her a bakery and is like, hey, in order to get your inheritance, you gotta stay here for a year. And Maddie's like, what? She's also a social media influencer. And she's like, what? I don't want to be here. But she quickly falls in love with this really little town, and it's so cute and it's cozy. And so this is the second book following her. I appreciated how much of the side characters, how they were expanded upon. We really get to see how Maddie is fitting into the society, fitting into this community. And she's thriving. She's living her best life. She does have a bit of a not so positive relationship with her father, who is in the military, who basically thinks she's lazy and doesn't do anything and like can't do anything for herself. And we get to see her navigate that relationship just a tiny bit more. I would have liked to see that developed a little bit more, but I have a feeling that we're going to get that in the third book based on the events of the end of the second book. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I enjoyed myself. I listened to the audiobook. I do wish that Maddie had done a little bit more investigating. A lot of things were super convenient, especially considering the fact that in the first book, things weren't that convenient for Maddie in terms of investigating. Like, she was actually investigating. I felt that there was so much work done on the side characters in this book that the actual mystery plot fell to the wayside, which is why I was only able to give it 5 I was not giving it 5 stars. I was only able to give it 3 stars. Next up, we have Sins of the Lines by Shahanda Exantis. This is a mystery that is dual perspective. We have a mystery where this golden girl, and this takes place, does it take place on the HBCU? I can't remember. I just remember that, I think it does. Yeah, is this an HBCU? I'm pretty sure it is. Oh well. The girl that goes missing is black. Her best friend is black. I'm pretty sure this takes place in an HBCU, but do not quote me on that. This follows what happens after this golden mystery girl goes missing when she is supposed to finally pledge for this sorority. And that is all I can say about it. It's dual POV. You follow the detective on the case, as well as the girl who goes missing, her best friend. I will say that I wish there was a little bit more characterization to this. I felt absolutely nothing when it came to these protagonists. I was not connected whatsoever. However, the mystery plot is top tier. I mean, I wanted to know what was happening. I finished this in 2 sittings. I read the first half in 1 sitting, and then I was like, I need to go to bed. And then I promptly finished it the next night. Again, not going to bed, because I had to know what was happening, how were all these things being tied together. And I found myself like actively thinking, okay, could it be this person? Could it be that person? How does that work? And I gave this 4 stars. Even though I wish the characterization was better, I still gave it 4 stars because the intrigue and the plot was incredible. All right, let us move on over to contemporary. I have a middle grade, I believe the only middle grade that I finished this month, and that is When the World Turned Upside Down. This follows 4 friends, well, pseudo-friends, 4 connected middle schoolers who all live in the same apartment complex as COVID-19, that shutdown begins. So this takes place, it starts in March 2020, and yeah, right? Me trying to describe this without triggering myself and going back to that time. Anyway, I love the character development. All 4 characters were distinct. They were different. You were invested in their problems, both within their little friend group, but also within their families. They each have something different going on. Their family structures are all diverse and they're different. And I appreciate the fact that there is a diverse novel that focuses on the experience of these 4 kids. I believe this is them right here. Yeah. These 4 middle schoolers at the start of the pandemic, while also dealing with some of the other real world things that were happening, including the racial tensions that were very prevalent during the, spring, summer of 2020. I forgot what I gave this one, so I will put the star rating up there. Next, let's move on to Sunshine Nails, which I absolutely love this cover so much. So basically, we follow... Oh, you know what? It's a short synopsis, so I shall read it to you. Vietnamese refugees Debbie and Phil Tran have made a comfortable life for themselves in Toronto with their family nail salon. But when an ultra-glam chain salon opens across the street, their world is rocked. Complicating matters further, their landlord has jacked up the rent, and it seems only a matter of time before they lose their business and everything they've built. They enlist the help of their daughter, Jessica, who has just returned home after a messy breakup and a messier firing. Together with their son, Dustin, and niece, Thoy, their family devises some good old-fashioned sabotage. Relationships are put to the test as the line between right and wrong gets blurred. Debbie and Phil must choose. Do they keep their family intact or fight for their salon? I really enjoyed this. It's incredibly character focused. The characterization, for the most part, is super well done. There's one character in here, Thoy, the niece of Debbie and Tran, who I wish we got a little bit more from. In the beginning, when we meet her, I was super intrigued. I wanted to know her perspective because she's recently emigrated from Vietnam to Canada, and I wanted that perspective, especially when you consider the perspective of her aunt and uncle who have been in Toronto for decades, as well as her cousins Jessica and Dustin, who were born in Toronto. So she fell to the wayside, and it's like some of the decisions she makes, you want to see the rationale for them, but at some point I just didn't care because we barely get her up until she makes these like really, oh my goodness, what are you doing decisions. Otherwise, really enjoyed the characterization. I'll definitely be picking up from this author again, simply for the character work. It was funny, it was poignant. It also touches on how guilt, especially white guilt, can really destroy or tank certain franchises or certain businesses, especially businesses that are immigrant led or led by those of minority communities, and how we can combat that while also addressing certain very real issues. And it definitely made me step back when thinking about that topic and that theme, but it also confronts the question, what is, I don't even want to say the American dream because they're in Canada, but what is this dream that the Western world sells, and who is it really available to? And I ended up giving this one 3.75 stars. Next up, we have a super popular book that has caused many a discussion on BookTube and Bookstagram, Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. All right, let's get into it. So basically, right? Where I'm starting this. Basically, we have this writer, Juniper Hayward, this white woman writer, who is pseudo friends with this Asian writer, Athena Liu, who is the like golden jewel of publishing. Athena gets everything. Juniper wrote the one book and kind of stalled after that. However, when Juniper is hanging out with Athena and Athena chokes on a pancake and dies, Juniper, takes a manuscript that Athena is working on and publishes it as her own. She ends up using a pseudonym, Juniper Song, right? And so this book calls into question the idea of who gets to tell what stories, the toxicity of publishing, the toxicity of social media, and things like that. I have heard the critique that this book it lacks subtlety, which, yeah, it does. It's not subtle at all. It is very much a satire. And I wrote a whole blog post on this, so I will leave that link down below, about how satire has to make a choice, whether it's going to be subtle or overt, right? And there is a very particular reason, I think, that R.F. Kuang decided to go the not subtle route. I've read the Poppy War trilogy, and that book deals with colonialism and imperialism, and it does it in a subtle manner. So I know from previous experience that R.F. Kuang can write subtly. So it was interesting to me to think about why she wouldn't write subtly when it came to this book. And I encourage you to go and read that blog post. And that's all I'm going to say about Yellowface, besides the fact that I gave it 5 stars. Okay, let us move on into romance. First romance is a YA romance. This is Whiteout. This is from the same 6 authors that wrote Blackout. And I'll read, again, the synopsis because it's short. A snowstorm like this hits Atlanta once every 100 years. As the city grinds to a halt, a group of teens bands together to pull off the most epic apology of all time. A confession under the twinkling lights, a car full of bittersweet memories melting the ice, a whole city blanketed in snow, being warmed from the inside out. From the all-star authors who wrote Blackout, Danielle Clayton, Tiffany D. Jackson, Nick Stone, Angie Thomas, Ashley Woodfolk, and Nicola Yoon, comes another unmissable interwoven novel of Black teen love, each relationship as unique and sparkling as southern snowflakes. This was super cute. I enjoyed it. I thought that the overall story arc was way better than what we got in Blackout, because in Blackout it's very easy to forget that it's supposed to be an interwoven novel, but in this one all of these characters are more closely connected to one another, and you get that right off the bat. And I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I mean, the synopsis sums it up, and I also really enjoyed the audiobook, which has a full cast. Next up, we read That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon by Kimberly Lemming. This has been taking over at least all of my feed. So it's been taking over Book Talk and Bookstagram, because this author recently was, well, she was previously independently published, and then she got picked up by Orbit because of how much this series blew up, even being an independent author. So we have this main character, Cinnamon. This is actually considered a fantasy romance. Yeah. So we have this main character, Cinnamon, who her family are spice farmers, and she ends up inadvertently saving this demon who's like, hey, I kind of need your help because you're the only one who can help me defeat this, like, old witch spirit thing. And they end up going on this quest together and also falling in love. I found that for how short it was, it's like 182, 183 pages. For how short it is, it perfectly balanced the romance with the fantasy plot. So my fantasy loving heart was swooning. I was just like, oh my god, fantasy and romance in the same package and equally balanced and done well. This book was freaking hilarious. Highly recommend. I have the second and third book. They're on hold at my library, and it's a couple weeks, and I'm really sad about it. I might just buy the ebook version because the paperbacks are currently not out yet. So there's that. I'll also put both covers, like the original cover as well as the remake cover, since she got picked up by Orbit. Next up, we have Explore You by Lula White. This is actually another independent Black author, and we follow Cher and Kevin. This is book 1 in the Explore Men of the Hampton series. So, you know, it's very, very Black, very rich Black money. This actually felt like forbidden love. Like, these two people are on opposite sides of a long-standing feud. I appreciated Cher's journey and learning how to prioritize herself as opposed to what her family wanted. I do wish we would have gotten a little bit more character development from Kevin, but, you know, you win some, you lose some. Steam, top tier. It was just a fun time. I enjoyed it. I will say these books are a little thick, so it took me quite a bit to get through them, but that's not necessarily a detriment to the book because I was engaged the entire time. But if you're looking for a very, like, quick, fun romance, this one is fun. It's just not necessarily quick. And I gave this one 3.5 stars. Next up, we have the last romance that I read during the month of July. And this is another one, birds, can you stop? This is another one that people have been raving about since it came out, and that is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. Yes, I finally read it, and I absolutely loved it. I mean, what to say about this one? I think out of, like, my pages of notes, this book has the most notes. All right, so this is definitely a story I see myself returning to for both the story and the characterization. And it's so fascinating to see two characters who are at two separate stages in their grief and healing. So some backstory. We have Yasmin and Josiah. They met in college, fell in love, got married, and we meet them 2 years after Yasmin has asked for a divorce. So they've been divorced for 2 years by the time we meet them, okay? The kids are, I think their eldest is 13, their youngest is 10. We meet them after a divorce. We meet them after the death of a close family member. We meet them after a stillbirth. And it is them finding their way back to each other. It's a second chance romance. It is them finding their way back to each other while still also growing and developing. And Josiah's growth takes so long. He is so stubborn and so hard-headed. But it is so worth it by the time he recognizes the work that he has to do in order to show up in this relationship with Yasmin. And it was just great. It was a great time. I gave it 5 stars. I mean, go read the book. Well, check the trigger warnings and then go read the book. All right, now moving into the historical fiction, and actually the last novel I'm going to talk about in this video. Did you hear about Kitty Carr by Crystal Smith Paul? This is an interesting one, right? So this is a dual timeline, dual perspective. And we meet, or we follow Elise, who is a black actress, a wealthy black actress. Her and her sisters have been bequeathed the fortune of a elderly white starlet who has recently passed away. And so they're trying to figure out, even though she's a close family friend, like, why would she leave us her entire fortune? And it goes back and forth between the present storyline with Elise and the past storyline with, yes, Kitty Carr. This is a story about how interwoven the descendants of chattel slavery are into the American story, and how we cannot and should not want to ignore that fact or turn a blind eye to that fact. This is also a story about choices and what happens when we have forced a group of people to make choices that essentially split them in half, that make them feel as if they have to choose one part of themselves or another in order to make it in this society. This is a book that asks incredible questions about choices, about identity, about redemption, and what that takes, and how do you redeem yourself after you've made some questionable choices. I wish we'd gotten a little bit more depth from Elise. She's really just there to honestly tell us what happens after Kitty dies. This is definitely Kitty Carr's story. Yeah, I mean, Elise is kind of, yeah, she really just is there to tell us what happens after Kitty dies. And I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Next up, we have the manga that I read. I read 8 volumes from the same exact series. I have started and caught up in the Apothecary Diaries. Absolutely loving this series. I talk about it a little bit in a vlog, which you may or may not be seeing already. I don't know, so I'll give it a short recap. We follow a character, Mao Mao, who works in the Imperial Palace. This is a historical fiction manga. She works in the palace as a maid. She was trained previously as an apothecary, and when she solves the mystery of why the emperor's young heirs keep dying, she is moved to become a food taster for one of the royal consorts. And we follow her journey solving a lot of different mysteries, small mysteries, but also a larger mystery in the grand scheme of things. I love the character of Mao Mao. The side characters are really robust. They're definitely unique and distinct, and it keeps you intrigued. I've given none of them less than 4 stars. So volumes 1, 2, 4, 5, and 8, I gave 4 stars, and I gave volumes 3, 6, and 7 5 stars. Volume 9 comes out this month on October, on August 15th, and I am super excited. That is it for the books that I read in July. This is my first month since, leaving my job, and so I thought I was going to read a lot more, but even though I read less than I thought I would, I thoroughly enjoyed what I did finish, and I read quite a lot of physical and ebooks, so I had a great time. Honestly, I know nobody cares about the numbers. I'm just used to reading a higher volume of books, but I still finish quite a few heavy hitters and quite a few books that I've been wanting to read for a very long time. So that is great. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Comment down below, what was your favorite book of July? Make sure to find and follow me on all of the different social medias. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Threads, I'm on TikTok. Make sure you follow my blog. Also, if you are interested in buying any books in new or like new condition, make sure to check out my Pango Books storefront, where you can essentially shop my shelves and get some great prices on books that I no longer need in my collection. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.
I ain't living for the moment. I see what's mine and I want it. Hungry like a Pac-Man. I'm Bruce Wayne and Batman. I'm Naruto with a Hanzo. Got a sharp mind like I'm Einstein. Plus I'm copywriting, so it's all mine. Check it for me, I'm in the sky.